Welcome back to another edition of the Educational AD Podcast. We couldn't do these without the incredible support of our sponsors, and we want to start by saying thank you to all of them. First, thank you to our diamond sponsor, Varsity Brands, including BSN, Varsity Spirit, and Herff Jones. Varsity Brands, elevating student experiences in sport, spirit, and achievement. We also want to thank our platinum sponsors, Ephesus Lighting, innovating a brighter future at every level. Gilman Gear, always a step ahead. Camp Mobile, where teams communicate better. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. And Vital Signs, bring student achievements to life. Thanks to all of our great sponsors. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest today is Dr. Danielle LaPointe. She's the Director of Athletics at Manatee High School in Bradenton, Florida. Danielle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
We're excited to have someone from your area of Florida. We're looking forward to it. Well, as you know, the life of an athletic director these days in particular is very busy, so we're going to jump right into it. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you went to school and college, and maybe how your involvement and your love of sports led to that first teaching and coaching job.
Okay. I'm originally from New York, East Greenwich, New York. It's a suburb outside of Albany. I started playing sports as, one of my first memories. Played baseball and Little League and did all of that. My dad was big into sports, so I just kind of followed right into his footsteps. In high school, I played soccer and lacrosse. I did have an experience when I was younger, much younger, probably 8 years old maybe, where people were questioning me being on a baseball team, being a female. And that was the first time that the way I looked came into play, and I'm grateful for that now, because it's really shaped the way I think and see a lot of different things when it comes to athletics, because I don't ever want anyone to ever feel that way. So but that's just one of my earliest memories of sports and how it really has shaped who I am today and why I do what I do. So I went to college, started a club lacrosse team with some friends, which was a very, very cool experience to be part of. PE majors there take a lot of courses because you have to take every sport. Each sport's half a credit, so you end up taking a large amount of courses. So the lacrosse coach wanted all of her players to be on 5-year plans, and I was not interested in staying any longer than I needed to. So I ended up played club all 4 years. It was awesome. And then I ended up graduating early. So I just stayed and got my master's in health. So that was great. So I graduated, and it snowed on my day of graduation. And I've always wanted, as a little girl, to move to Florida. So I drove down to Florida the next day, and I got a job, and been here ever since. I started at a middle school my first year. I was at a middle school and I was coaching. And the next year, there was a high school down the street getting ready to open. It wasn't even built yet. And I was lucky enough to jump on board with that. So I got to open a new school as a teacher and as a coach, which is a great experience. You get a wealth of information and knowledge from that. And then that AD position became open in like 2 years, I believe. And I wasn't really given the chance for it, even though I did want it. I really felt like an AD's role could help the entire athletic program. They could affect every athlete in the entire school. They could do so many positive things that had just a large outcome of positivity. That's what I wanted to do. So I wasn't given it a chance, and I was bummed about it. So I really had two options. I could either complain about it, or I could do something about it. So I decided I was going to do something about it so I could never be overlooked again. And that's when I enrolled in my doctorate program at North Central University in athletic administration. So I started that venture. That was at Liberty High School in Kissimmee. I was there for 5 years. Then my husband got a job over here on the West Coast, so I started looking for a job over here, and that's when I landed at Manatee High School. I've been here for going into my 6th year here. I have since graduated with my doctoral degree, which was incredibly difficult, but very excited to be here. And I was at 2 large schools with very different situations, and it's been a huge help in how to think outside the box and what works and what doesn't. And I just think I'm very grateful for the experiences that I've had so far as an athletic director.
Oh, it sounds like a great journey. In our business, we always talk about the importance of leadership and mentors. Who have been some of your mentors, either growing up or professional mentors, that as you go about your daily routine at Manatee High School, you can still hear their voice and their encouragement in your head?
I would say the 2 people who really stick out for me, my dad is definitely one of them. I've always been he's just a great person, and I hope I can live up to what he is one day. And the other person who I would not be where I am without is Chuck Hitt. He is a retired AD from Harmony High School. And when I first got my AD job, I was younger. I think I was 26. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And I think that's probably the first thing for all ADs. You just don't know what you don't know. And he really took me under his wing, and I could call and ask him questions without judgment. And if there was something to do and he didn't think I knew about it, he would have given me a call, and we would talk through situations, because sometimes the bylaws and the policies are the simplest things to understand. So he would definitely, we could talk through them and try to figure it out. So without his guidance, I don't think I'd be the AD that I am today. I mean, there's just always room for improvement, but he has been a huge factor in what I do. I can't say thank you enough to him.
You've had the opportunity to be an athletic director at 2 different schools here in Florida, different settings. How have you seen the job of the athletic director change, let's say, in the last 10 years? How is it different from when you first got involved?
Huh. I was going to say it would be an easier question to answer. Well, the compliance requirements have just doubled, tripled. There's so much more that an athlete needs there that a coach needs. I would say the big thing is a coach needs. And now we have the Zachary Martin app that just started, and there's just so many different aspects that we need to be monitoring at all times. But I would say that's just part of the job. I'd say one of the biggest things that I deal with, unfortunately, way too often is social media. That has really changed how athletic directors have done their jobs. There is, if you have 850 athletes in your school, there's 850 social media accounts that potentially could have issues or could not have issues. And the stretch of social media is very beyond imagine, I guess, when it comes to high school sports.
Let's go and talk about Manatee. You've been there now. I think you said it was your 7th year.
I'm going to 6.
What are some things that when you first came to Manatee and you're kind of taking the temperature, what was one thing maybe that you looked at and said, well, guys, they're doing a pretty good job here, but I think we can do better? Or just something that you've brought new that you're particularly proud of?
Manatee was built with a lot of tradition. There was already greatness when I got here. It wasn't anything that I needed to do or change when it came to that aspect. To just build on that tradition, to allow that tradition to continue was important. Not to come in and be like, well, I'm new and this is how we're going to do this. That would have been the wrong approach. To come in and just be like, what do you guys do that's great? To sit back for a year and be like, what works and what can I build upon? Was probably, I think, was very vital to that success. And then getting the coaches to know each other more, I think, was something to make them realize that they're all on the same team. The coaches are my team. So to get them to know, each other and to work together. So maybe there wasn't it just makes when one sport is successful, it's easier for all other sports to be successful behind that when they're all working together. It's an easy way to get other sports to be successful.
What's something that you're doing now that is helping foster that sense of community with the coaches, what they are supporting each other?
Well, before COVID, there were certain things we do. We always have, when I have my meetings, I try to make it like a dinner, and to have it be more of like sit down and eat and talk, and then we'll have our meeting. And at the end, I try to do some sort of like end of the year thing where all my coaches can come together in a not work setting, whether it's a party or whatever that is, so they can just hang out and talk and be like, great job, everybody. Like, coaches do a lot for our athletes, and they don't get recognized enough for it. So just my little ways of appreciation, I make sure every year I get them, thank you for being here. Here's a polo, here's a water bottle. Like, understand, like, last year I got them some book bags, and I was like, as I gave them to them, I purposely was like, as cheesy it may sound, like, please understand, like, this is a token of my appreciation for everything that you're doing for athletes. So when you're having a bad day, just remember how much, or bad game, or got some bad calls or whatever, just remember how much the athletes appreciate it, and I did appreciate it.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. You mentioned COVID, so let's go ahead and go there. Obviously, it's had a huge impact on athletes, on everyone. I'm curious, what were some things that you did this past spring when spring sports were initially shut down? What'd you do with your kids and your coaches? And then understanding that in Florida, anyway, we have a variety of responses. What's going on right now with Manatee High School with regards to summer conditioning and possible reopening?
Well, COVID has hit home very much here in the last week. We have lost a member of our athletic family to COVID last week. So it is very fresh for us right now. When it came to how we shut sports down, I guess in March, we were on spring break when it happened. So it was kind of a unique time because we went on Friday with the understanding that we were off for a week. And then we were going to, come back, and we got shut down while we were already off. So there was never a chance to come back and get going and be like, hey, tomorrow's our last day. Take your stuff out of your locker. We had to do things like uniform drive-throughs to collect uniforms. And then what we did is we bagged all the stuff that was in a locker and gave that back to the students so they could have their stuff while they're at home. We didn't want their stuff to be stuck in lockers here at the school. I can't come on campus to get it. I sent out some SurveyMonkey surveys to my coaches to try to keep up with, like, what do you guys need? If you're in contact with the kids, are they all right? Are they contact everybody and make sure they're okay? And does anyone need help with assistance? Like, does everyone have a laptop and internet? Like, that type of stuff. We were trying to reach out to make sure everybody was okay with that. My county started on June 15th, we started doing conditioning, and we have 3 phases of it. That's how we were going through it. We've been kind of stuck in a modified phase 1, I would say. We're hoping on Monday of this next week, we're going to start maybe introducing some sports-specific equipment finally. But what we've had to do for the kids to come back, the kids have been great. They're social distancing. I've painted M's on the ground, so they don't have to think about it too much. They can kind of just stand on an M. Wearing the face masks and the check-in. My trainer has been vital in the success of how quickly our check-ins have been going in. And we've been bringing in kids in pods of 10. So the check-in times are different. And all the coaches and the kids and the trainers have all been working very hard together. And I think that's the important part. Like, all of them together is what's making it go smoothly and successfully right now.
I appreciate you sharing that. What's going on right now with your school as far as, conditioning and making that transition to fall sports?
So next week, we're going to start having sports-specific equipment. And then the following week, which would be the 24th, pending what the board meeting is we may start that day. we're going to have to figure out a couple of things, which I think all schools are going to have to do. And our school is going back 3 different ways. You're either going back, the students have the choice of going back 5 days a week, hybrid, or e-learning. So I'm just going to have to try to figure out, we have, our campus is a neighborhood campus. So we're going to figure out more specifics. You know, if it's a hybrid student that's coming back to play sports, where are they going to park? Where are they going to enter and at what time? You know, all those logistics. That's what we're trying to iron out now as we get prepared to finally start again.
Yeah, there's just so much more than just scheduling games and handing out uniforms. Something else we've been talking about on these podcasts, this past spring, we saw just such an increase in awareness about social issues, social justice. I'm curious, from your perspective, what are some things that we can do as athletic directors with our communities, with our kids, our coaches, to do a better job in this area of, social awareness?
That's a hard question. I think that I wish that we didn't have to see people as a male or a female or by race. I wish it was just everybody's a blank canvas, and you could and to try to view people that way. So the injustice, I think, would kind of disappear if it's just an athlete, not a Caucasian athlete or an African American athlete or coach or vice versa. So I think, especially now with everything going on with COVID and with the social injustice, it's a very important time. We're moving forward. We're sensitive to all of those issues, and I just think that it's important to remember. At the end of the day, I'm a firm believer we all have the same blood, all the same muscles. You're gonna throw a ball the same way, regardless of what you look like. So, and I hope that all of my coaches, all my students, everybody remembers that.
Yeah, and I think sports historically has done, let's say, a better job, because it is, very much merit-based. You work hard, you hustle, it doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, that's going to stick out to your teammates and your coaches.
You're absolutely right. Stats don't lie.
Let's go and shift gears a little bit. What are some of your favorite parts about being the athletic director? What gets you excited about coming to school each day?
Well, obviously the athletes. I'm sure every athletic director says that, but obviously the athletes. That is definitely what does it. I like to try to figure out ways to make things easier for my coaches. And the easier it is for my coaches, the more my coaches are going to be able to coach my athletes. And it's going to be a trickle-down effect. One of the things I want to really impress upon my athletes is that if you love athletics, you love being part of sports, you don't have to be an athlete to be part of it for the rest of your life. You could be a coach, you could be a trainer, you could be a lawyer, you could be a team doctor, you could be equipment. There's so many things that you can do that you're involved with part of the team. It doesn't necessarily, just because you're not the starter or you're not going to get a scholarship, doesn't mean your athletic hopes and dreams are over. So that's something I really want to try to implement on our student athletes, that there's a huge team behind every star that people just don't see.
Oh, I think that is so true. Now compared to 100 years ago when I was in high school, there's just so many more teams. There was no soccer, there was no lacrosse when I was in high school. And so there's just a lot more opportunities on the field. But those opportunities that you mentioned, being a manager, a scorekeeper, we have a young man at our school who's announcer for our varsity games, does a wonderful job. So I just think that's a great idea of yours to get kids involved in the athletic experience, maybe not from the traditional field or court, but still involved nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Danielle, we've come to the end, but we're not done. We always like to wrap up with what we call the athletic director's toolbox. You're an experienced AD now, and you're getting ready to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job. But I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. What's going to go in Danielle LaPointe's athletic director toolbox?
Just 3 things is difficult. But I would say one of the things that has worked the farthest for me is communication. Communication is so important, whether if it's good news or bad news or just repetitive. The communicating with your coaches is important, but on top of that, coaching your coaches. Coaching the coaches is so important. You wear so many different hats as an athletic director. Sometimes you're going to be out of the field. Sometimes, you're going to be in here after a bad game. You're going to have to try to talk your coach down. There's going to be so many different roles that you play as a liaison between the parents, and just coaching coaches how to get through all of that, but also communicating with them, understanding like, this is the bylaw. I know you don't like it, but this is why. Explaining to them why we're doing what we're doing. I think coaches are a lot more apt to, maybe they don't have to agree, but maybe once they understand why, we're more likely to follow it and be okay with it. So I think that would probably be my first one. The second one, it would be a thick skin. That's what it would be, because you're not going right off of what I just said. You're not going to make everybody happy all the time. It's impossible, especially if you're at a really large school, whether it's the coaches or the parents or the athletes. But you need to do what's best for your athletic program, and sometimes that is making hard decisions. So you got to do it, and just know that you're doing the right thing for your program so you can sleep at night. So thick skin would be helpful. And then I would say my third thing goes back to what we talked about more. I would say my contact information, or a local athletic director of theirs' contact information, because the mentoring part of it, whenever we have a new AD come in, I try to reach out and let them know, like, if you need anything, like, please don't be afraid to call or text or email, because having somebody that can just help you is just huge. I really think it's vital to the success of new athletic directors, especially as there's so many compliance issues and stuff that's on top of it. So mentor ADs and mentoring the younger ones is just huge.
Great advice. Really appreciate you sharing. Well, we've been visiting with Dr. Danielle LaPointe from Manatee High School. Danielle, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
To our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Come back again next time for another edition of the Educational AD Podcast.